Nigeria is a developing nation with a fast rising population of about 200 million people. And it is in this dire need of infrastructure development to boost our economy. According to National Bureau of Statistics, the country's debt grows from 8.32 trillion naira in June 2013 to 26.2 trillion naira as of September 2019. The Debt Management Office says Nigeria's total public debt stock increased to 46.25 trillion naira, or if we say $103 billion as of December 2022. The DMO disclosed that the new figure is made up of domestic and external total debt stocks of the federal government, 36 state governments, including the Federal Capital Territory. To tackle the issue of rising debt in the country, I have joining me live on Zoom the Deputy President, Lagos Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa. Thank you so much for joining us today, and happy Workers' Day.
Thank you.
Well, Nigeria's debt has continued to rise. We've been talking about this for as long as I can remember, and servicing it has also become a problem. First, let me get your reactions to this.
Well, it's for at least the last 8 years, before the present administration, that situation has deteriorated significantly, particularly from the point of view of capacity to pay. Not so much the volume of debt in relation to our GDP, but in relation to our revenue. Our revenue were like 4 or 5 times what it is today. We wouldn't worry about the amount of debt we have now. So it's essentially a capacity to pay situation that we're dealing with.
When you talk about the capacity to pay our debt, some persons will wonder, for a country like Nigeria that has a growing population of 200 million, we have the youth population, which is like the productive population, has a huge number. The productive population has a huge number. We have the resources from oil to non-oil resources. What would you say we're not doing well to actually tackle this problem? We seem to be having some technical glitches, but I don't know if you can hear me. I'm asking that for a country that has 200 million, an estimated population of 200 million with a vibrant youth population, one would have expected that we would have been able to devise a means to see how we can service our debt. What do you think we're not doing right?
Well, the vibrant population of young people needs power. They need one of the most important critical infrastructure in modern industry, which is high, robust internet access across the country 24/7. And they need an infrastructure that works so that if they need to move from point A to B, they can do that very quickly. They have the energy to work, but these basic things are not there. And that is really what is holding back the economy. We have 200 million people, 200 million hands, pair of hands, that 400 million brains, and about 70 to 80% of them are young people below the age of 35. So you have vibrant, intelligent people and enterprising, even those that are illiterate, who are very enterprising and just need an opportunity to express themselves and do some business. But if there's no power, there's internet, the roads are in bad shape, then you are going into economic war with your hands tied behind your back, so you can't do much. So that's really what we need to fix.
Some persons, particularly some persons in the Buhari administration, would say that they are trying to, of course, improve on infrastructure and work on the power sector, just like you mentioned, but the statistics are there, the numbers are there to saying that we're taking about 77 trillion naira in a short while if we consider ways and means facilitated by the CBN. How worried are you would you take a look at what the Buhari administration has done to building infrastructure and what we're still borrowing? Mr. Idahosa, can you hear me, sir? I was asking...
Yeah, I had a bit of it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I was asking that for the Buhari the Buhari administration, that has said that it has worked on infrastructure, developing infrastructure across the country with the roads, with the expressways, also working on the power sector. Some persons would be worried, about the 77 trillion naira in a short while that we're talking about, that we're taking in a short while if we consider the ways and means facilitated by the CBN. I want to ask, how worried are you as an expert in the sector?
Well, I think the key word is trying. See, you are trying to build roads, and a lot of the roads are not finished. We have been trying and now almost completed the second Niger bridge, the major project, local, and some of the rail lines, but we haven't completed most of them. So you need to complete them to have the benefits from that investment. If for example, the Lagos-Ibadan road is completed, the rail line from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri is completed, and all of them are working, and you can get the benefit of that investment. So there's the question of the speed at which these projects are done. There's the question of their cost related to international pricing. Doing projects at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times the cost of building the same road in other countries. So all of these are reflecting in the amount of borrowing. So if another country borrows $100 million and they can build 500 kilometers of road, and we borrow the same $100 million and we can only build 1/4 of that number of roads. It simply means that we are not getting sufficient value from the borrowing. So that is compounding because when you raise money to build infrastructure, you expect your economy to grow, and so you can collect more taxes, and then you can pay. But if the roads are not growing fast enough, the economy is not growing fast enough, power infrastructure is not growing fast enough, then you cannot grow the economy to revenue. For example, we are still struggling with about 4,000 megawatts per day, 4,000 actual distribution. Our generating capacity is 13,000 megawatts, but we only distribute 4,000. And for a country like Nigeria, you actually need something like 60, 70 to 100,000 megawatts for public supply. So you cannot generate the revenue if you don't have the infrastructure that is as large as your economy, both in terms of the geographical size and the population. Every single Nigerian is power. So if they are not powered, but the small-scale industry have free access to cheap, sustainable, 24/7 power, and I have to repair my diesel, I have to buy petrol, I have to worry about maintaining. All those things are produced in the situation we have now. That you just can't generate the kind of revenue you ought to generate to pay off these debts. We haven't even talked about whether you need to borrow or borrow. Well, let's even say you need to do all that borrowing. You must generate enough regular revenue, far more than what you need to pay those debts. You can pay the debts and still have revenue left to run the economy, to provide essential services. But the entire revenue we have now is slightly less than what we're spending just to service the debts. So it's 100% plus. At some point, it's 96% in the last quarter. This quarter, I'm saying 92, 94, 95. But it's actually, at the end of the day, it crosses the 100% line between borrowing and revenue. So we really yet have not really got around to addressing the significant increase in revenue that we need to make before we can say that we are comfortable with the kind of borrowing we have now.
While some persons would say that borrowing for this government is not a really bad idea, but I want to ask, what are the options available for the government if they do not borrow to build infrastructure?
Again, that is the dilemma that we find ourselves as a country, because we do have the options and actually have about 25 to 30 years experience in the other options. You look at the telecom industry. In the last 20 years, investment in that industry is several billions of dollars and naira. All of that is not borrowed. We are not owing any money to China or any other country for all the investment in the telecom industry. We simply set up the Nigerian Communications Commission, set up an efficient transparent licensing system, and the whole world is bringing investments to Nigeria for the telecom industry. We could have, and we should that for the rail industry. We don't need to borrow any money to build. All we needed 20 years ago, we need now, the Nigerian Rail Transport Commission to do exactly what the Nigerian Commission is doing. Set up a licensing framework, give licenses to operators of rail lines around the world who have technology and the financial capacity to build rail lines. In those countries, the population of countries like Korea, Canada, France, that have very efficient rail systems are less than 1/4 of our population. Say 50 million, 30 million in Korea, France about 50 million, Canada less than that. And they are able to run very efficient rail system in those countries. So imagine giving those up because 200 million people in a country that is far the size of Korea, for example. So it's an investment opportunity that is just sitting there that they will jump at. So that is one way we can eliminate borrowing from one particular sector. The other experience we have, again for over 20 years, is public-private partnership. We look at Nigeria LNG. The federal government has 49%. The partners have 51%. Just because of that 2% difference, LNG is able to operate as an international energy business recognized in the international market. So Nigeria LNG does not need to go to the treasury to borrow any money for all the expansion from the first train to 7 trains they are now building. They have easy access to the international market. So again, the government will do that in other sectors. The government can say we want to hold 49% of our airports. We don't want to borrow to expand our airports. And we want to be 51% operators of airports in the world who know how to run that business. They have the money, they have the technology to build airports. Right now, they are owing billions of dollars again to China for the expansion in our airport. So between licensing and public-private partnership, based on our own experience, not by all bank consultants or anything, just based on our experience in telecom and our experience with Nigeria, we can drastically reduce the amount of borrowing that we are doing now. So it's just simply up to a government that says, look, let's do it. We have the experience. We have the template in those options.
You've rightly said some of these options are available for Nigeria. But if you take a look at how this present government, that's the Buhari administration, seeks to focus on non-oil proceeds, how competitive are companies operating in Nigeria?
Non-oil, we have never been an oil economy as regards the actual reality of the economy. It is a decision of the federal government in particular to depend on oil exports as its primary source of revenue. The oil industry has never contributed more than 25% to our GDP. The big contributors to our GDP have always been agriculture, for example, major one at 7%. But oil contributes to our foreign currency income, our foreign exchange income. And that is why it looms large. And it attracts so much attention to the government to the detriment of all the other sectors. When you look at the creative industry, for example, until very recently, the creative industry grew from Nollywood to the music and other aspects of the economy without government support. Again, you look at the ICT, information and communication technology sector. For many years, the government did not help it. It grew by its own, just by the talent of Nigerians. And so today, the ICT, the technology sector is the fast growing sector in our economy, the largest contribution to our GDP. So the government essentially is not choosing to look at oil. It's living to the reality that we have for a long time ignored the most powerful ingredients of our economy and have just sat back and just take the oil revenue, spend it, and believe that's just fine. But with the oil industry around the world being redefined with the global change, global warming, and the fact the whole world is moving from consumption of oil ethically. And then, of course, you have immediate issues with the Russian war. Generally, the whole world is finding a way to get out of the oil industry as a major part of their economy. So Nigeria is not doing it because it likes to do it. It just finds that it has to get out of oil as a major part of government revenues and a major driver of the economy.
But if you take a look at how competitive they are, would you say that they measure up? If you take a look at how competitive these companies are, would you say that if you compare with the interest rates that is high at both ends of the curve, would you say that the environment is conducive enough for these businesses?
It definitely is not. That's the concern of everybody. You need to continuously improve the business environment. The federal government set up the PEBEC, the Presidential Enabling Business Council, to address that specific question. How do we rapidly improve the business of the environment? And in the federal structure, you have the federal, the state, and the local governments. All of them have a part to play in improving the economy. In fact, the local governments can practically wreck most small businesses by all kinds of taxes and obstacles they put in the way of small businesses. And then you have the state governments who are yet to address substantially what is under their purview, which is the road network in the states. So the federal, of course, is the big one that everybody is talking about, their failure to deal with the major highways, rail lines, and so on. So every sector of the economy has to do a lot more than we are doing now in improving business. We cannot be competitive in another country. Competitors have 24/7 power supply that is very cheap. They have very robust internet access in every part of the country. They have smooth public transportation. They don't have to buy cars. They don't need to buy trucks. Because the metro lines and the cargo rail lines are working like work to move your goods around. You don't even need to live in the city center to walk in the center. You can come to the city center train that takes you there in 10, 20 minutes, and when you finish, you go back to the suburban areas. So you cannot compete when you are in Nigeria with those kind of economies. The only way you can compete is for governments to understand that that enabling environment is so critical that it's like an emergency beyond politics. It is what the government just has to do. And it is not only the federal government, because a lot of commentary on enabling a business environment talks about federal government. But the states and even the local governments do a lot more damage to the business environment than the federal government. Because most small businesses, for example, have direct interaction with the federal government. Most of their interaction is with local governments and state governments. And that's where all the obstacles and hassles that face them in the course of trying to grow their business.
I'd like to ask you a final question. What's your outlook, for as we expect a new president in 28 days?
Well, the outlook essentially is that government has its work cut out for it. Whatever you are looking at, it is the inflation rates, the foreign exchange rates, the unemployment rates, all those things are all moving in a direction you don't want to see as an incoming government. So, but I think that the incoming government is already not just aware of these headwinds, but they have people who understand these issues and are doing some work. The outlook for the next 2 quarters, for example, is that there will be a transition, a rapid transition in government policy and government thinking and action from where we are now. Because certainly the president-elect's team is working, and there's a lot of work around how to redefine government solutions to some of these problems. So we will live in that transition period where all the problems we have now deal with us. But as we go towards the end of the 4th quarter of this year, to begin to see the effect of changes. We expect to see a new thinking about borrowing and why should we borrow, what we should borrow, and how we borrow, and how much we should borrow, and for what purpose. We expect to see a big change in that direction. We also expect to see general public finance management infrastructure. We expect to see some really different ways of addressing that. In that short period, employment is not going to suddenly drop. Inflation is not going to suddenly drop. Yeah. We expect, of course, that the interest rates are not going to suddenly drop, but we are going to see a new set of solutions in addressing these problems. So 1 year down the road, we need to see the effect of new changes. That's really the outlook. So the outlook is transitional. We are going to be moving gradually from the big issues we have now to another set of solutions, different from the solutions we are seeing at this time.
Deputy President, Lagos Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, thank you so much for joining us on the program.